from around the globe. It's theCUBE, presenting CUBE on Cloud, brought to you by SiliconANGLE.
Hello everyone, welcome to this session of CUBE on Cloud. I'm John Furrier, your host, with Dave Vellante, who's not here on this segment, with Howie Xu here. We're going to give a cloud update. I want to make sure that everyone's on the site. If there's a player in the page, Chuck, if you can go make sure you check on the site to make sure that we have the stream up and running. This was an ad hoc bringing someone from the crowd back up on stage. So if you go to the 365 site, guys, make sure that there's we have the stream up for Howie and I. So just double check on that. I don't think that's displaying on my screen if you're out there. And in the chat, go check us out. We just added this impromptu calendar item. Howie, great to see you from the crowd, now in the hot seat remotely via Zoom. Great to see you.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the tweet 10 minutes earlier to join this ad hoc session. But awesome. This is the spirit of cloud.
Awesome. And we got what I want to do is just make sure everyone knows Howie is a CUBE alumni, been on the CUBE many times. We've been in CUBE conversations. He's been an entrepreneur. He was at VMware in the early days, an entrepreneur in residence with Greylock, where Jerry Chen has been on many times, and now at ZScaler. Howie, you and I have had many awesome conversations. Almost if you go back and look at the tapes or storage on the disk, really relevant even today. And one of the things that you've been talking a lot about in these conversations is everything as a service. Okay, I brought this up at reInvent when I was interviewing everyone from Andy Jassy down to the people leading in cloud. They all agree. It's a great mission, but they're still going back to automation. Right? Like, automate. So where are we in this? What's your take on the cloud status of, automation, microservices, and ultimately everything as a service?
Yeah, I think, the spirit of the cloud is just in time, remove the friction out of the everything, right? When it comes to service, I think that the beauty of the service is, anytime you need it, it's there, and then you don't have to pay the overhead when you don't need it. I think, we started this conversation about cloud about almost 10 years ago. I think this has been a journey, and I think now finally, if last time, the first time we had a conversation about cloud, it was, right after the financial crisis. It changed everything. People cannot afford to do some of the customers cannot afford to do the on-prem deployment or the design, a joint software, joint piece of the infrastructure. They started thinking about, hey, how can I have the pay-as-you-go, just-in-time kind of service? That was from the last crisis. This time, if anything, of course, pandemic is not great for many people. However, it is actually accelerating the cloud adoption again, because this crisis forced people to be on the cloud, even the CUBE, right? You and I, previously sitting in the studio. Now we actually sit on the cloud and then do the conversation. So if anything, the last two big crises really accelerated the cloud. That's what happened in the last 10 years. We have lots of conversation in the last 10 years, but if you look at it, that's pretty much two big milestones for the cloud era.
I got to ask you, if you were an entrepreneur out there, I know you've got a great gig right now. ZScaler is doing great. And by the way, the company's successful. But if you're a startup right now, you look at what's happening. We're in a pandemic. We're hopefully going to be out of it soon. You now have certain industries that have tailwinds for growth. Obviously Zoom, which we were talking about bringing Eric on, but last minute couldn't get him on. But he's a good friend of yours and ours. He's in our community. Zoom, CUBE, virtual, information, and you also got information disinformation issues, which is essentially not just about fake news; it's about a vulnerability of information. All this is a new opportunity. It's a whole new level of challenges that require data. And then you got the cloud guys who are continuing to scale, and that rising tide is only going to get bigger, right? So What's your take on that? I mean, because you got the big players getting bigger, you can ride on their coattails, and then you got opportunities with data and AI and machine learning to solve big problems. What's your assessment?
Yeah, first of all, Eric said hi. We only give him 1 minute notice. He's in a meeting, obviously. But that's also about cloud. I think big guys getting bigger. That's pretty obvious. That in a way you can say that startups or entrepreneurs now have to dealing with the giants. It's almost like it's very big. It's a challenge, right? But on the other hand, I think from entrepreneurs' point of view, people should look at a cloud as an opportunity, because now it's much relatively speaking much easier to build out a service at a reasonable cost, and then you don't have to pay ahead of time, and then you can just thinking about some architecture when there are really large number of customers, that the infrastructure will grow with you. You don't have to think about the capex ahead of time. That's a really, really good advantage. If I think about the startups I was involved 20 years ago, for instance, it's headache, right? How are you going to build it? Maybe it's a great idea, but you cannot even afford it. But these days, that hurdle is removed. So I think the way I look at the cloud is, one is, that economically it's actually good for entrepreneurs. But the other thing is actually the rich services available. I mean, even, we just talked about Eric. I mean, even Zoom has platform, has API. You can build out potentially vertical conference services, whether for education, for training, for whatnot, on top of the cloud services out there. So you can focus on what you know well, and only focus on what you know very well, and then bring differentiated services instead of spending 80% of the time thinking about programming software that's not relevant to what you bring to the table in a unique way.
Yeah, and one of the things about Zoom, just to talk about Zoom real quick, they're an app, but they are getting more aggressive on the development side. We're actually embedding Zoom into our CUBE 365 event, group platform, this event platform, so that people can just zoom in and get into the room. So, and then they're adding more stuff too. At some point, Zoom can't do it all, right? So it has to be an ecosystem around this. And I got to ask you, because this becomes the most important conversation. We're back to the platform conversation. When are you a tool? When are you a platform? If you're going to be a platform, you have to have certain things. You have to have an ecosystem, and you have to have a value proposition that makes you significantly more or significantly better than the competition at a lower price. So I think that flywheel of, you got to be, a multiple factor, maybe 10x as an example, or 5x better than the competition, whether that's simpler, easier, faster, and lower price. If not, then you're in enterprise software. So what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think, for entrepreneurs, or, yet to be entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs in the garage, or you are kind of, just started, I think there's a great opportunity to build a next generation platform, right? I think Amazon, Google, Azure are there, being the infrastructure. There's an opportunity to build a platform as a service, or higher level abstraction service on top of it, so that you can build more vertical solutions on top of it. Zoom obviously is a household name, right? But Zoom has the potential to be a platform. I mean, the jury's still out for that one, but there are opportunities for entrepreneurs to build the next generation of the platform. I think if you think about it, the ecosystem, you just talk about ecosystem. Every generation, 10 years or so, there are only a few platforms people are going to gravitate towards, right? If you look at early on, Microsoft, Windows, right, Linux, and then in the last 5 years, the public cloud. I think the next 5-10 years, people are going to gravitate towards the next generation of the service, the platform on top of the public cloud, on top of the infrastructure. It could be Zoom, it could be the competitors or the siblings or the another platform of very different nature. But there will be a few platform people are going to gravitate.
That's a great point. I want to just interrupt you there because you mentioned something about Zoom. I never thought about that. This is the first time I've kind of riffed on this publicly. But I've always said Amazon has been great, and look what Snowflake did. They built an entire company on Amazon. It's possible that someone could build a company on Zoom, for instance. So the platforms don't have to be us and them, zero sum. What you're saying, I think what you just said was, you can have platforms within platforms.
Yeah,
I can sit on top of Zoom and leverage their benefits. And the question is, will Zoom let me do that? Again, this is product strategy meets technology at a whole nother level. I mean, is Zoom thinking about that? Is Zoom waking up and saying, hey, I want people to build on my platform?
Ask our friend Eric. I'm pretty sure that's on top of his mind. Look, if you look at history, right, in the computing industry, digitization journey we have gone through, the abstraction level just is always getting higher and higher, right? Remember the days 20 years ago when Intel says, I'm going to release this chip, this CPU. We're all excited. That's the top headline of everything, right? And then we read the spec, what's going on. But these days, people care slightly less about what next generation CPU they are releasing next, the Windows, right? VMware used to be the sort of the platform, the choice, so that people pay attention to every major release, right? And then we get into the public cloud era. I think, and then before you know it, it's going to be, like I said, Zoom is kind of one candidate, and there are, lots of candidates. But 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we are going to talk about abstraction layer, or the platform of that level. And then next 5, 10 years, we're going to build a platform higher and higher level. I mean, in the end, it's, building software is going to be easier and easier in some ways, right? So that's kind of
that's a great point. That's a great point to capture, because, this idea of abstraction layers is not new, but it's more accelerated now because there's more complexity that you can abstract away with software.
Right. Now,
there's plenty of problems to solve, but you don't have to throw away the old and replace it. You can just build an abstraction layer on top of it and take advantage of it.
Right. And it's not necessarily means that the software is getting easier because, scale, right? The multi-cloud, there are different dimensions of complexity. But writing just some simple task, right? Doing video call or audio stuff, it's a one API away. Whatever. If you look at what Twilio offers, right? It abstract out those complexity away. So you focus on different level of these things. I mean, ultimately, the software is going to eat the world. It's already eating the world. I mean, it's what we expect from the software is more and more complex. And then so what's happening is eating more and more of the world, at the top, but the bottom is going to be abstracted away by the infrastructure guys or by the platform.
It's interesting, Howie. It's so much fun to talk with you because you kind of bring the software and also you bring the systems approach, which is really unique and great for conversations. It's funny, I was joking with Dave and our team and our customers once saying theCUBE virtual because with COVID, there's no physical events for us to go to anymore. So we call it theCUBE virtual because we're virtual. And because we have obviously a love and historical perspective around VMware, we call it virtualization of theCUBE. But if you think about the concept of virtualization, what it meant to servers, remember the early days of VMware?
Yep.
What happened because of it? It was virtualized, and they virtualized with software. If you think about kind of what's going on now with software, if you virtualize things, and I'm using this kind of metaphor to kind of make a point, is you can do more. So what you can make virtual servers, you can make virtual cubes, you can make virtual anything. That's ultimately a software-driven model. In other words, replicating it. So how do you see that trend? Because, virtualizing AI, virtualizing machine learning, virtualizing media, is that, am I off, or is that my missing things?
So not just because, I grew up at VMware, but from my point of view, everything is becoming more and more virtual. Here's the thing. VMware's virtualization is actually ultimately, or at the end of the day, it was a pure positioning thing. Just a very smart way to position it, because what VMware did is basically a operating system, right? Competing with Windows Server. It's trying to upend the Windows Server, but early days, you can't just tell Microsoft, hey, go away, or tell people, hey, I'm the legitimate alternative to Windows Server. So VMware invented this term called virtualization, but really, it is an operating system, and it executed brilliantly. So virtualization, from that point of view, is a pure positioning. Instead of saying it's a VMware OS, it's saying, it's a virtualization. We're the legitimate leader. Now, that being said, if you think about virtualization, it has the benefit of, almost like cloud, right? Putting the resource together, giving you the flexibility, easy to schedule, all that kind of things. That the spirit of that benefit is carried on generation after generation of the platform. Like I said, 10 years ago, the center of the universe was the virtualization software from VMware. Today, the center of the universe, is a part of is AWS, Azure, and the GCP, right? And the next generation of the platform will be, like I said, whether Zoom or not, we'll see. But that's kind of the platform will have the similar spirit, right? More flexibility, more centralized resource, and then people who are using that platform need to worry about less, right? About the scheduling, the optimization. I'm worrying about writing my software. The spirit is the same. So each generation probably just do virtualization better and better. That's one way to look at it.
That's a great point. It's like, to me, it's just all about systems thinking and operating systems design. Distributed computing is just the same kind of thing. We got some great questions from the audience. I want to ask you, the question to you, Howie, is from Rob Hof, our editor-in-chief. What's the next level of abstraction in platforms, and who's positioned to own that next level?
Interesting. I think it were from two different angles, but related: data and then the AI. Data, right? I think we all know the importance of data, how to extract the information out of the data, intelligence out of the data, decision out of the data. Same thing with AI. So I think today, if you want to apply AI machine learning to solve some enterprise problems, there are still a lot of frictions, right? That's what keeps my job interesting and busy. And then that job has to be easier and easier. The way I look at it is, we have done 50 years or so the conventional or traditional programming. We have figured out how to do this, and then we have design patterns figured out. But for AI and machine learning, we are still trying to figure out what is the right design patterns, what is the right tool, what is the equivalent of the visual studio of the AI. And I think that's still a journey. But that's that's one way to look at it, right? What's the visual studio of the AI era? That's a new platform. What is the visual studio for the data platform? So those two things are related, but a little bit separate. But I think those are the big flavors that I anticipated to be in the next generation of the platform.
That's awesome. Great answer. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. I want to get a quick take on your vision of machine learning and AI. Obviously, every cloud event now, whether it's just reInvent, now others are rolling out. Everything's AI driven. Everything has AI in it. What is the secret to success, or what is the architectural thinking, maybe a better way to put it, for a company or an engineering team or a group to architecturally think about how to be positioned to architect a machine learning or AI-like future? What's your take?
Right. I mean, if I have the comprehensive answer, we are halfway done with the journey. No, that's not true, right? So I think we are still learning. There are a few things I would just caution or just share the perspective so that it may be helpful for other people to be aware of, right? So AI machine learning, AI is a fairly big hammer. Think about what is the problem that otherwise not quite possible to solve. Using AI and the machine learning to solve those kind of problems. Essentially, how do you deliver 10x value rather than 20-30% improvement? Because if you try to solve a problem and try to use AI machine learning to deliver 20-30% improvement, at the end, probably not worthwhile. You probably bring more trouble than not. So that's one dimension. The other thing is, data, right? AI, machine learning, data, obviously, it's super important because you don't have data, you don't have AI algorithm, right? A lot of the AI algorithm derived from the data by definition. And then cloud. Why cloud and then AI is kind of these two things will create a perfect storm. It is because before, data is scattered around. And now with data together, you can finally actually start looking at the data with less friction. I mean, if you think about that's what ZScaler is, right? So ZScaler is the security cloud for people. So now, all the traffic goes through us. Now we are finally at a stage that, hey, we have all the data right here, right there. And then we can apply machine learning and AI to do wonderful things. The last thing is, there is actually a lot of debate in the industry about, do we really need a sophisticated machine learning or not? I talked to lots of industry experts on this topic, and it turned out that roughly 80% of the enterprise problem probably can be done. You can just use the tried and true machine learning problem. You don't algorithm. You don't really need to have the postdoc of some machine learning program to solve the problem. However, it's still very tricky. Like I said, how do you solve this problem? What metrics? What's the design pattern? How do you do it? It's difficult. But then there are also a set of problems, 10, 20% maybe, of the problem. You really need to take the AI algorithm to the next level. You need a few PhDs level of the work. So it's kind of confusing, right? Some people say, well, AI machine learning, isn't that just use a few standard tools, you can solve it? Yes, that's true for a lot of the problem, but not true for some other problems. So you have to be very careful. First of all, why you use AI machine learning, and secondly, what kind of the tool set do you use, and what's the the benefit you really want to get out of it. So when you get onto that level of details, I think we're in the early journey of how to do AI machine learning, solve lots of enterprise problems at scale, at a low cost. I think, this is a journey I'm very excited myself, and then I think this is for cloud guys to be excited.
Howie, great to have you on. Great to see you. You're a good friend of theCUBE. We love having you on. As we push our software out there, we're doing more of these together. We'll get
next time, don't give me just the 10 minutes heads up. Give me 15 minutes heads up.
This is our clubhouse. We're going to get you a posse. We're going to get a crew, whatever, entourage. We'll have talks. We'll do more of these regularly, and we'll get more people, right? We'll have some fun. This is our first beta run of the software. We'll continue to push the envelope, but having your voice out there and having these kinds of conversations are super important for the community, and you're a great community member.
So you're saying that next time it's not even 10 minutes. Next time it's 5 minutes. I'll make sure I'm getting
No, we'll do 30. You can have the whole room. It's like clubhouse model. We're going to do, it's a CUBE room, CUBE house. Great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Howie Xu, legend and CUBE community. Great to have him on. Always awesome. So smart, plugged in, really super smart. And you got to listen to what he has to say. He's a real expert, and he's in the trenches and doing great work. It's John Furrier with theCUBE on Cloud. Stay with us. Check us out. We've got some great programming to end the day. Thanks for watching.